Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and a couple of my subscribers directed me to a video that Scooby did yesterday, and some of them felt that he was addressing it at me, but to be honest, after watching it, I don't think Scooby was addressing this video to me, because one, he never addressed any of the points I've ever raised as far as athletic training or functional training, and I don't always like to use the term functional training because this has been misconstrued by a bunch of dumb fucks who want people to do presses on Bosu balls and squats on Bosu balls and things, and so I really have no use for that. So I don't like that term to always be mixed up, even though the term itself is fantastic, that it's been misrepresented by a bunch of idiots. But I also didn't like some of the points that Scooby raised in this video, and I want to address that for a minute because the video was brought to my attention. Now, I appreciate the fact that he mentioned specificity of training, and I'm going to get to that a little bit, but this whole idea that different athletes have completely different needs isn't true, and I really hate the idea of discussing a very small muscle in isolation when comparing athletes, like the triceps, because I can't think of any sport, let alone boxing or powerlifting, the example that was used to where you do nothing but lock the tricep 10 times in a row. Nobody does that. You don't isolate the tricep in any sport of which I am aware. Maybe one of you guys will come up with something, but here is the point. Both the boxer and the powerlifter, when they use their tricep, use a tremendous amount of other muscles. They both train for them to be fast, explosive, and powerful, and to recruit as many other muscles as possible when they do it. When a powerlifter bench presses, he isn't using just his triceps. He's using everything from his chest to his core, to his legs, to his hips. When a boxer punches, there's probably more force being generated by his hips or his glutes or his abs during a punch than there is in his actual triceps. So that's a terrible example to use. And when I'm talking about athletic training or functional training, what I mean is that I don't like the idea that people are training exclusively for aesthetics while neglecting other things when they could be getting multiple other performance elements while gaining the same amount of size at the same amount of time in the gym. That's what I'm talking about, of what I don't like. And I'm not telling people they can't do that. It's just my opinion on training that the whole concept of it I find personally ridiculous. And I know a lot of other people who do also. It's only people within the bodybuilding world who don't find it ridiculous. And the bodybuilding world makes up a fairly small percentage of the training world. And case in point, I used the example the other day of the same number of reps for the same basic body parts in the same time period of doing a seated machine shoulder press for 3 sets of 10 over a course of 5 minutes with something like 2 minutes break in between, versus training a behind the neck push press for 10 sets of 3 with 30 seconds between, both with roughly 75% of your max, but done as explosively and ballistically as possible on each rep. You still have the same amount of tension on the primary movers and the same hypertrophic potential for the delts and the triceps in that, but you're getting a lot more speed, power, you're getting a lot more stability, you're building other muscles throughout the body and training the body to work as one unit rather than trying to isolate a muscle, and both can build the same amount of muscle in the primary movers. Both have similar amounts of metabolic fatigue in them. And we could take that, use that example, or we could use an example of doing the exact same thing with a machine hack squat versus a barbell squat with the 10 sets of 3 versus the 3 sets of 10 and training them explosively. And for either one of those examples, the only sport to where you would get equal results in both is bodybuilding, which isn't a sport. It is an art form. I consider it to be a type of beauty contest, but it's not a sport. Any other sport you can name, the other would yield far more benefits on the playing field. For a boxer, for a power lifter, for a sprinter, for a swimmer, for a tennis player, any of those sports. You can name virtually any sport, and the example I listed of the more athletic style of training will give them tremendously more carryover to their sport. In fact, since it even builds more maximum strength and power, it will even carry over to marathon running, because we have plenty of data showing that extreme endurance events at maximum strength carries over to work capacity. This is understood in the training world. It is one of the few performance elements that carries over to all other endeavors other than flexibility. And so I really don't like this argument that people make of, oh, well, people train for different things, and so functional training doesn't mean anything. Well, I just gave you examples of a style of training that can produce the same amount of muscle gains using two different examples of different lifts, but one of them will clearly carry over to better performance in virtually any single sport that you can name. And that is what I'm talking about with athletic training. I'm not talking about just your sport-specific training. I'm talking about your general training patterns of what else they will carry over to. And so hopefully that clarifies that a bit, and hopefully that puts some contrast to the video that Scooby made on the topic. And I do appreciate the fact that Scooby addressed the point, and I love that he addressed specificity of training. But that is kind of one of those straw man arguments that people make when they go too far with the specificity of training, and again start talking about individual muscles when no sport in the world do you ever isolate an individual muscle. All right, guys, so my rant is over, and that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it has been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time. But let me give you guys a bicep shot before I go.